So now we're going to go on to our award picks. So we'll MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and then Coach of the Year predictions. And then for each of those, we'll actually add a dark horse for them too. A player who, a little more, not an official pick, but it's more of a shocking pick, a player that could emerge into that position. To start off with MVP, I have Aaron Rodgers. He's the best quarterback in the NFL, one of the most talented of all time. Adding Jimmy Graham helps. They don't have any running game. I mean, Ty Montgomery still wears 88. Their running game's not great. They're going to rely on passing to win a lot of games in the NFC, and especially in the NFC North where it's so tough. I think he goes for 4,500 yards for the second time in his career, and then he leads the NFL in touchdown to interception ratio.
I also, for most valuable player, have Aaron Rodgers. Best quarterback in the game without at least mentioning Tom Brady. It's a toss-up.
I don't need to mention him. I'm not saying that nobody else matters. I'm just saying that I think he's the best.
He's a debatable best quarterback, but
Tom Brady is a system quarterback.
How can a system quarterback be called a system quarterback when he's had so many different systems?
This is a debate for a different day. We can talk about this in our debate of the week.
I'm taking 5 minutes out of a podcast sometime to just educate you on how you're wrong about Tom Brady being a system quarterback. We can talk about this
in our debate of the week in the NFL season. But right now, talk about why you think Aaron Rodgers will win MVP.
Because he's Aaron Rodgers. He's already won the award twice. He's so I know most valuable player doesn't actually mean most valuable player to most voters, but he is the most valuable player to the Packers. They are nothing without him. He's going to have a huge season in a tough division, and I see him as an easy MVP candidate, in my case, the favorite.
For my MVP dark horse, I actually have Phillip Rivers, which you don't really think of a dark horse as somebody as old as he is, but he's always been good. But last year he emerged as elite. He's got a lot of weapons around him. Like I said, I was talking about the Chargers. They got Gordon, Keenan Allen, Tyrell, and Mike Williams, Travis Benjamin. Obviously, losing Hunter Henry and Antonio Gates hurts, but they're the favorites to win the division, and he looked really good at a lot of points last year.
My dark horse is a quarterback that could win the award if all the stars align and everything goes well this season, and that's Derek Carr.
Isn't that every quarterback?
In this case, it's certainly more relevant. Derek Carr, they got new weapons, basically an overhaul of the roster to fit John Gruden's scheme, and if John Gruden and Derek Carr click, apparently the Martavis Bryant and Derek Carr connection has looked fantastic in the training camp, but it is training camp. If that translates to the playing field in the regular season, watch out for Derek Carr.
So for Offensive Player of the Year, my pick is Alvin Kamara. I think he's the best two-way back in the league. It's not really a football term, but I'm making it a football term. I think he's better at running and receiving than Le'Veon and David Johnson in year 2. The suspension of Ingram gives him a hot start. I think another bold thing, I think they could look to trade Mark Ingram to a running back needy team because Alvin Kamara is a stud. He can do it all. He can ground and pound and he can receive out of the backfield. So I really think Kamara's I think he's honestly might be the favorite for this award with how good he looked last year.
Now, my Offensive Player of the Year pick is someone with a lot of motivation going into this year, and that's Le'Veon Bell. He's not best friends with the Steelers right now. He shouldn't have to prove himself, but he's in a prove it year in terms of I'm worth this money, pay me my money, somebody pay me my money. He's going to catch 80 balls, he's going to have a ton of carries, he's going to score a bunch of touchdowns for a very productive Pittsburgh offense, and he should be in line for a huge contract comes next offseason.
So for my Offensive Player of the Year dark horse, I have Leonard Fournette. Blake Bortles is not a quarterback that's going to pass the ball to win games. The running game makes or breaks the Jaguars season, and they're going to need to ground and pound to wins this year, defense and running. If Fournette can stay healthy, which obviously is tough as a physical runner like he is, it's hard to stay healthy, but he's a physical specimen. I really think he could easily eclipse 1,300 yards this year if he can be healthy for the whole year.
I have a little bit of a deeper dark horse in terms of Offensive Player of the Year, and that's Derrick Henry. If he can go back to the absolute workhorse that he was at Alabama. I mean, DeMarco Murray's no longer on the roster. Deion Lewis will be in more pass-style situations or plays. If he can carry the load for the Titans, rack up a bunch of yards, red zone carries, what have you, could be a stat-loaded year for Derrick Henry.
For my Defensive Player of the Year, I have Joey Bosa. He's definitely one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, one of the brightest young players. And the thing about him is that they can't key on him because Melvin Ingram's on the other side. So usually when you get one big pass rusher, like when Justin Houston had 20 sacks a few years ago, they just key on him for the next 3 years. That's why he hasn't been the same player. When you have a player of Melvin Ingram's caliber on the other side, it's tough to key on someone like Joey Bosa because they have so much better. There's so many other good players, and with Casey Hayward leading an underrated defensive backcourt, you'll get a lot of opportunities for sacks.
Defensive Player of the Year, I also have Joey Bosa. I think offensive lines and offensive coordinators will look to try to stop him specifically on the defense this year, I don't think that's going to matter. He's so strong, has such good hand placement, smart defensive football player. He's going to get to the quarterback. He's going to have a ton of tackles for loss. And I just love to watch Joey Bosa play football, so I wouldn't be surprised. And in fact, I'm predicting that he will win Defensive Player of the Year.
For my Defensive Player of the Year dark horse, I actually have talked about him earlier. I have Xavier Rhodes. I think he is definitely the best cornerback in football. A 6'1", physical specimen, can be physical with any receiver in the league. With a heavy pass rush and good support over the top, I think he will get a lot of picks. He's a good tackler on the open field. And I know that defensive backs don't often get it. The last defensive back to win Defensive Player of the Year was Troy Polamalu in 2010, and then Charles Woodson in 2009. But I do think Xavier Rhodes will get a lot of picks. The teams don't throw at him a lot because he does lock down the top receivers, but I do think that he's going to have a fantastic year.
Yeah, if Jalen Ramsey messages this podcast for you calling Xavier Rhodes the best cornerback in the league, I'll let you deal with that. It's a debate for another day, as are most things that we say with each other.
I will be honored if Jalen Ramsey listens to any word that I ever say.
True. It's a stretch to call Xavier Rhodes the best corner in football. Very good, top 5 corner. Moving on. My dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year, Cameron Jordan. What a stud on the D-line for the New Orleans Saints. An underrated Saints defense last year. Had, obviously, Marshawn Lattimore getting a bunch of the headlines, but Cameron Jordan's one of the most respected defensive players in football, according to his placement on the NFL Top 100 list, voted on by the players. Shout out to NFL Network for your list. Watch it every year. Lots of disagreements, but double-digit sacks are a key for him this year. I imagine it's going to happen for sure. Tackles for loss. He's so quick off the line. Big things for Cameron Jordan.
Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think just about everyone has the same pick. Saquon Barkley, like Zeke and Fournette and Gurley before him. You have all the opportunities in the world. The only knock on him that he's not a surefire, I think, is his offensive line. He's still a supremely talented player, probably a better prospect than any of the 3 I just mentioned. But God, that O-line was so bad last year. I mean, they benched a quarterback who'd started 210 consecutive games, and most of it was from his offensive line. So I think if that says anything, it should be that Saquon won't have the same offensive line that Zeke has. So if it wasn't for his offensive line, I really think he'd be the absolute surefire, but I still have him as my pick.
My favorite is also Saquon Barkley. There's not a lot of clear options for Offensive Rookie of the Year besides Barkley, but nonetheless, Barkley's the favorite. He's going to get a ton of touches this year. He's just a physical specimen. His combine performance is absolutely outstanding. I look for his college days to translate to the NFL, which for running backs, it typically does more than other positions. And big year, definitely Offensive Rookie of the Year for the Giants.
So for my Offensive Rookie of the Year dark horse, I have a pretty deep guy here. I have Kerryon Johnson, the former running back from Auburn that got drafted by the Lions. This is off topic a little bit. I do think that Auburn would have made the college football playoff had he been healthy for the SEC championship game against Georgia. LeGarrette Blount is not a viable option anymore. He's pretty old and pretty large, so he may get touches on the goal line, but he's not going to be the lead back like he was. Amir Abdullah and Theo Riddick are definitely more third down pass catching backs. I definitely don't think both of them will be on the roster. I think one of them will, but I don't think that both those two will be on the roster anymore.
Pretty old and pretty large. That's pretty tough on LeGarrette Blount, who's back-to-back Super Bowl champion. My dark horse...
Sorry, one more thing about Kerryon. I think he's often overlooked because he did get drafted so late. I think by the end of the season, he will be getting the meat of the carries, and I do think he'll be this season's Alvin Kamara in terms of later draft pick that breaks out.
But no, my dark horse, Calvin Ridley, could be a dangerous year for the Falcons, the opponents of the Falcons, I should say. The receiving core is deadly. Calvin Ridley lining up in the slot could get a lot of targets, a lot of receptions. Could be a dangerous year.
Defensive Rookie of the Year, I have Bradley Chubb. He's about as talented as a pass rusher can be when they come out of college. With so much attention on Von Miller and how good he is, Chubb won't get as much attention as he should, even in his rookie year. He'll be the Robin to Von Miller's Batman. The AFC West is going to have some tough pass rushers with Bosa and Ingram, Chubb and Von Miller, Justin Houston's still there, Khalil Mack and Bruce Irvin. They have some serious pass rushers. I think you'll have big sack numbers. He's got great talent. I think he's the stout pick for Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Roquan Smith, the next great Chicago Bears linebacker. If he actually signs his contract, and here's hoping, he's going to be dangerous on the field. He goes sideline to sideline. He knows what's coming on the offensive side. He tackles. Oh, the way he tackles just looks painful for the offensive player. I can't wait to watch more of Roquan Smith playing football, and I'm glad he's wearing a Chicago Bears uniform.
Defensive Rookie of the Year dark horse. This may seem cliche, but I have Shaquem Griffin. A lot of people know him for his hand.
Is he going to play defense?
A lot of people know him for his hand, but he's no slouch. He's if anything, he's more talented than other players because he only has one hand. Seahawks gutted their defense. They don't have a lot of guys left. He may not start the year as their starter, but I definitely think he'll be a stud pass rusher. Not stud, but I think he'll be their starting pass rusher by the end of the year, and he's no slouch.
You say people know him for his hand. I'm just trying to be accurate, and then people know him for his lack of hand, the amazing things he was able to do in college football despite that setback. Just clearing things up. My defensive rookie of the year dark horse, Rashaan Evans, inside linebacker from Alabama, now a Tennessee Titan. Mike Vrabel's going to take him underneath his wing. Great defensive coach in Mike Vrabel. I mean, those Alabama linebackers are always reliable in the NFL, and I think Evans will be very productive in his rookie season.
Coach of the year is pretty simple because we already talked about the teams. I have Anthony Lynn as my coach of the year. A lot of Chargers. I think the Chargers are the best team in the division. Although a tough division, I do think they'll win it, and they do have some improvement over last year. So I do think the Chargers have a lot for a deep playoff run. So Anthony Lynn is my pick.
Yeah, I also have Anthony Lynn. Big things from the Chargers coming. Just LA in general, like I keep saying, it's a good year to be in LA. Chargers going to win the division, I would say, and Anthony Lynn's going to be a big part of that.
For my coach of the year dark horse, you ready? Hugh Jackson from the Cleveland Browns. They do, like I said, they do have an underrated roster. They do have enough talent on their roster to win some games. I'm just saying if they win 6 or 7 games, that's 6 or 7 more games they won last year. And Coach of the Year is mostly about improvement and breakout teams like the Rams were last year. If the Browns win 6 or 7 games, even if they don't make the playoffs, that's improvement. And as much as Hugh Jackson gets hated on, you have to give him some credit there.
Yeah, I'm just going to say no to that one. But my dark horse is the first-year coach of the Chicago Bears, Matt Nagy. I mean, if they are this year Rams, he's obviously going to be the favorite for coach of the year. There's a lot of weapons there. How Trubisky develops remains to be seen. But if it's a big improvement for Chicago, a year ahead of schedule like the Rams were last year, who knows? Coach of the year candidate.
Keep saying this year's Rams. Do they have Aaron Donald? Do they have Todd Gurley? They don't. They have. There's a difference between this year's Rams and teams that will break out.
Okay,
the Rams were talented. The Bears are talented, but Mitch Trubisky is Mitch Trubisky.
What were you saying about Jared Goff last year? You were calling him a bust after year 1.
Everyone was.
And I haven't mentioned him yet, but Akeem Hicks on the Bears defensive line, what a monster. Got to give a shout out to him.
Okay, so now we're going to go over a few players at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. It's partially for fantasy, but also just about for this season. Players that we think will overachieve or break out, and then players that will underachieve or start to decline.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about linemen too, but apparently that wasn't going to happen.
Okay. For quarterback, for someone I think will overachieve is my shocks. I have Dak Prescott, actually. People forget how good he was in his rookie year when he had Zeke and his offensive line. He was an MVP candidate. He'll have Zeke all year. And no, he can't carry an offense similar to Blake Bortles, but he does take care of the ball. And he does have his running game and the Cowboys running game to lean back on. So I do think you'll have a bounce back year from how down it seemed he was last year.
For quarterbacks, I didn't have a lot of overachievers. I only have one. I have a lot of underachievers, but this isn't a joke. I think an overachiever at quarterback could be Blake Bortles for the Blake Bortles standard. I'm not saying he's going to turn himself into elite franchise quarterback. I think he's going to not be someone that NFL players make a joke out of every week and people are yelling at in news conferences about how he's a trash quarterback. I think he's going to be a reliable starter and he's going to fuel the Jaguars into another playoff run.
We only had one overachieving quarterback, so it's kind of hard to judge quarterbacks. But underachieving, I have 2 of them. I have Ben Roethlisberger. His steep decline, it almost seemed like he was uninterested last year. With Le'Veon, it's only going to hurt his situation. We throw in more. Yeah, he'll have the big games where he throws for 500 yards because he has Antonio Brown and Juju. So I do think he'll still have big games, but I think this will be his last year. I do think he'll retire after this year because Le'Veon's going to be gone. They're not going to have anything left, and I do think his motivation is gone.
I mean, we disagree on the whole Roethlisberger subject. For one of my underachievers, someone you were talking about earlier, Matthew Stafford, I just don't think I see Matthew Stafford as an elite quarterback. I don't see him leading the Lions to a playoff run. I'm just not super high on Matthew Stafford. I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people love him, but, he's above average, but he's not great.
For my next underachiever, I have Mitchell Trubisky. Now don't. Just let me talk. And if there's something you want to say after it, you can have it.
Do I need to raise my hand?
Yes.
Should I tell the audience when I'm raising my hand?
Mitch Trubisky, I'm not doubting the talent. I'm just doubting the results. He does have a decent O-line. He does have a heavy workload or a heavy workhorse in the back with Jordan Howard, and he does have Tariq Cohen back there too as a receiver. But Howard's gonna get a lot of carries, and he didn't throw 2 touchdown passes in a game at all last year. He had a game where he threw 9 passes. The Bears offense, obviously it'll change this year, but I just don't think he's going to have a Jared Goff. I'm not saying he's going to be bad. He's going to take care of the ball, but I don't think he's going to be like you saying, like Jared Goff did last year. I don't think you'll ever be an elite quarterback. I think you'll be a starting caliber quarterback. I don't think he's ever going to be an elite quarterback that you think you want to take with the number 2 pick.
Well, okay then. We'll just leave it at that. Let's see how things play out for Mitchell Trubisky. I know his mom likes him to be called Mitchell Trubisky, so we'll be nice about that. Another underachiever for my pick, Dak Prescott. I mentioned a lot earlier. His rookie year was a little above what we'll typically see from Dak, I'd say. Last year's more typical. I don't see him as an elite quarterback, a franchise. Well, he's a quarterback that'll get you around 500 every year, and depending on the talent around him, could exceed that. I don't see a lot of huge things from Dak this year. I have another one because apparently my co-host doesn't. Case Keenum. I see him having a steep decline from last year. I think last year was a career year. Good for him. He got a contract out of it, but I just don't. Demaryius Thomas are. I don't expect big things out of the Denver offense this year at all. They have Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, good receiving core.
Royce Freeman could be a breakout candidate for running back.
Could be a breakout candidate, but, I think we'll see go back to the mediocre Case Keenum.
I just want to add this in there. I don't have him written down, but I do think Patrick Mahomes is going to underachieve per se, because everyone hears about his immense talent and his arm. Colin Cowherd said he's got the best arm he's ever seen on a quarterback. I'm not doubting the talent. He played in a Big 12 offense. He didn't have to make reads. It was a run and gun, backyard style offense. And yes, he did have a year to develop and marinate, but with Matt Nagy not calling plays and Andy Reid's style. Yes, Andy Reid has a history of quarterbacks, but I don't think he's going to throw a lot of interceptions this year. And after having Alex Smith being so careful with the ball, I don't think that Pat Mahomes is someone that is going to blow your doors off this year at least.
So I take it the MVP that you guaranteed for him will come a couple years down the road?
Yeah. I'm just saying, in 2023, if he's not a top 5 quarterback, I will be surprised. So, going on to running back, this is someone that I think that this is my biggest pick. I think it's someone who would definitely turn some heads this year. Jerick McKinnon for the now San Francisco 49ers. They got a lot of flack for signing him. They signed a 4-year, $36.8 million deal in the offseason. After Dalvin Cook went down with an injury, he really took over. He's a good runner, but he's a great receiver out of the backfield. And with Kyle Shanahan calling plays, he could have a Devonta Freeman-like impact. I definitely think he's talented enough that he could have that type of impact. And after Dalvin Cook went down, he split time, but he still looked like a high-caliber running back.
I also had McKinnon as an overachiever, so I'm just going to kind of skip over him. A lot of the same things that Reed said. But another overachieving running back that I see happening this year, Tariq Cohen. He's one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. He's going to get so many touches in this Nagy kind of Chiefs-like offense. I expect dynamic plays, special teams plays, big burst plays from Tariq Cohen this season, and he's going to be a fun player to watch.
Another player I have, Joe Mixon. I think this season's going to be Joe Mixon's coming out party. Andy Dalton is no longer the red rifle. He's going to get a lot of carries. He was a first-round talent with Jeremy Hill gone and Gio Bernard regulated basically third down duties. I mean, Joe Mixon's a decent receiver out of the backfield, so Gio Bernard could be out of the rotation by the end of the year. And Dalton is not a good quarterback. I think Mixon will get close to 300 touches this year. So I think Joe Mixon will be a stud this year. So I have 2 other guys that I had. I don't have a lot of notes on because I already talked about him. I have Dalvin Cook. I think he'll be a big contributor to that offense. Kirk Cousins isn't going to carry the offense, so I do think Dalvin Cook, he looked like a stud last year, so I didn't put a whole lot on him, but he looked like a stud. But when he got hurt, it was tough, but I think he'll bounce back. And then I talked about him already. I think Kerryon Johnson will break out as this year's Alvin Kamara.
Underachiever, and I don't even think this is that bold to say I see Kareem Hunt as an underachiever this year. Won't match the production of what we saw last year in his rookie campaign. He really burst onto the scene after some injuries in the Chiefs' backfield. I look for him to take a step back this year. They're going to be running big run and gun offense with the big arm Pat Mahomes this year. I don't expect a whole lot out of Kareem Hunt this year.
As much as I hate to say, I don't think he'll lead the league in rushing anymore, but I do still think he'll hit 1,000 yards just because So I think Spencer Ware will be gone by the beginning of the season after he got hurt last year, and Charkandrick West is a third down back. I do think he'll hit 1,000 yards, but I don't think he'll have the same type of impact he did last year. For underachieve, I have Le'Veon Bell. It almost seems that he's too invested in non-football. I mean, he's rapping. It just seems like he's not as invested in football this year.
Whatever.
He's obviously very talented, but he's just not as focused. I think the Steelers know he's not going to be here after this year, so they may try to move on to a different. They're obviously going to play him. He's going to do great, but I just don't think he's going to do what people are used to him doing in the backfield.
He's only going to catch 65 passes this year.
He's only going to put up 1,400 yards.
No, I'm done with underachievers. You're the negative one with running backs. So
this is one that again that hurts me to talk about. I talked about David Johnson. He's going to face a lot of stacked boxes. Last time when he had his breakout year, Carson Palmer threw for 4,000 yards. And with Sam Bradford being made of glass, Josh Rosen being a rookie, I think it's going to be a tough year. I still think he'll do good. Like I said, same with Le'Veon. I still think they'll do good, but I don't think they'll be at the same level that they were a few years back.
So we move on to wide receivers now. My first overachiever, Terrence Williams of the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys need a wide receiver to prove themselves as the number one option for Dak Prescott. I think Terrence Williams is that receiver. I mean, Cole Beasley, Alan Hearns also on that team, but Terrence Williams is the guy I think will prove to be reliable. He had that fiasco about out of bounds late in the game a couple years ago where he's kind of been a laughingstock, but he'll turn into a productive player and probably the guy that Dak Prescott will look to most.
Well, my overachiever, I have Paul Richardson, former Seattle Seahawks, signed with the Washington Redskins in the offseason. As a Chiefs fan, Alex Smith loves his slot wide receivers. Paul Richardson's going to get a lot of touches this year. And he had a lot of huge games with Seattle, but he didn't get consistent targets with Jimmy Graham and Doug Baldwin there. So I think he'll definitely have a big year. I think he could get close to 1,000 yards this year because Alex Smith pounds that. Albert Wilson, he made Albert Wilson look like a great receiver and got signed by the Dolphins. So I think Paul Richardson has a big year.
Another big year for wide receiver that's going to happen, a very interesting name, Juju Smith-Schuster. I see him getting a lot of targets in his second year in Pittsburgh after a very productive rookie campaign. I only see him improving. Another big play option on that offense on the opposite side of Antonio Brown. Obviously, coverage will be shifted towards Brown. The box will be loaded as much as it can be with Bell in the backfield. So Smith is an option for the Steelers offense that won't be covered up quite as much.
Another player who I have as an overachiever, I have Marquise Goodwin of the 49ers. When Jimmy Garoppolo came over, he didn't start right away, but when his first 3 games starting, Marquise Goodwin averaged 106 yards a game receiving. He's only 5'9", but he is a blazer. He almost made the Olympics as a sprinter. You'll get more consistent targets with Garoppolo to back there, and he's always had the talent. He was very highly thought of coming out of the draft, but he never put it together in Buffalo. So I think definitely he's someone that could put up big numbers this year.
Now, moving to underachievers for the wide receiver position, I only have one in this case, and the one that stuck out to me was Mike Evans. I've never been super high on Mike Evans. He's a big body receiver. He's a threat in that capacity for sure. I don't love his hands. I don't love his route running. I think it's mostly just Jameis makes a couple moves and throws the ball up to Mike Evans, which has been somewhat productive in the past. I don't see it working as well this year. I expect a decline from Mike Evans, to say the least.
My only underachieving wide receiver I had was Jarvis Landry, actually. He's in a new system, and it's weird to say about the Browns, but he does have more weapons around him than he did at the Dolphins. So he's not going to get... I mean, he averaged 10 catches a game last year with the Dolphins. He's just not going to get the same targets because they do have other players like Corey Coleman, Josh Gordon, 4 running backs that are viable options. And Tyrod slot receivers did not have a great year last year, so obviously that could be system, but he does have a lot of other weapons to work with.
Really, I expect more things out of Jarvis Landry this year. He's not going to be running only slant, drag, and 3-step out patterns in the Adam Gase offense. I think he's going to have an expanded route tree.
And I made a mistake. I did say he averaged 10 catches. He averaged 10 targets a game last year. Only 7 catches, but he did average 10 targets a game.
10 catches a game would be absolutely insane.
So we're just going over a few teams that we already went over. Teams that will overachieve. I have the Chargers and Browns, and teams I think will underachieve compared to last year. I have the Seahawks.
Yeah, overachievers on my end. I think the Chicago Bears have great potential to exceed expectations. I also have the Browns because if they win 3 games, that's 3 more than they won last year. Good job, Browns. Underachievers, Detroit and Dallas, as for the reasons I've mentioned previously.
So we're just going to go over a few coaches that are on hot seat. My big guy, I don't think Adam Gase even makes it to week 10. The Dolphins are going to be putrid. I think Adam Gase is gone in the first 10 weeks. Jason Garrett, now that Zeke's back, he has no excuse. He has 1 playoff win in like 120 games. Jason Garrett's just been bleh. I think Vance Joseph, if the Broncos have a bad year with Case Keenum, I think Vance Joseph could be on the hot seat. And Hugh Jackson, they finally have decent talent. If they win 3 games this year, there's no reason he should be there. Obviously, the obvious one, Marvin Lewis. Why is he still a coach?
Now, I have a couple more coaches on the hot seat. I must be a little, pessimistic than my co-host over here. I think Mike McCarthy, I expect things to go well for the Packers. If they do not, I see him getting shipped out of town. It's been talked about the last couple years, but it could happen this year. Dirk Cutter, he's definitely gone from the Buccaneers. There's just no way they're going to keep him after another horrible season this year. Jason Garrett, Jerry Jones keeps insisting that he's not on the hot seat. I disagree with the J-Man. Next coach up, Marvin Lewis. He'll probably somewhat retire, move into a front office position with the team after this year, but there's no way he's head coach for the 2019 season. Hugh Jackson, this GM didn't hire him, probably wants to start over, but kept him for this year for some reason after going 1-31. We'll see how it goes this year. Bill O'Brien, I think it's playoff or bust for Bill O'Brien. There's been speculation he could be fired the past couple off seasons. He has some injured players coming back. Hopefully he can prove himself this year. Adam Gase, dumpster fire there in Miami. He's going to be gone soon. And then one more, I have John Harbaugh. I think after a historic start in Baltimore for John Harbaugh, I think if he doesn't prove himself this year, it could be a regime change with Ozzie Newsome stepping out as GM, retiring at the end of the season. New GM could equal new head coach for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, after that mouthful, our last thing of our very long, actually, NFL preview is our bold prediction for this NFL season. I wish we had a drum roll in here. We could get that going. My bold prediction is that the Raiders will trade Khalil Mack before the season starts. Their contract negotiations have not been pretty so far. Mack, rightfully so, wants a huge deal. Probably wants to be the highest paid defensive player in football. Raiders don't seem to be wanting to budge on that. I imagine every single team, whether they're in contention or not, will be calling about Khalil Mack, offering something, draft picks, established starters, a mix of those two, but I don't think Mack's going to be along for the move to Las Vegas.
For my bold prediction, I'm not going to get into it a lot, but I do think that Colin Kaepernick has a quarterback job with the team by the end of the season. I think this is the year. I'm not going to get into a lot because it's a sports podcast, but I do think this is the year that somebody breaks down a needy coach or a front office that's desperate, and that Colin Kaepernick gets a job.
Yeah, you sure hope so. He's definitely talented enough to be either a starter or a overqualified backup for a pro football team, and it seems he's been blacklisted so far.
And for our last thing, our performance of the week, we just want to throw this in there. Johnny Manziel.
Now, his performance isn't the performance of the week. It's the Canadian Football League team. I don't even remember which one it is that traded him away to a different team and then absolutely pummeled him.
Johnny Manziel threw 4 interceptions in the first half of his CFL debut with his new team, and he was benched in the fourth quarter when his team was losing 47-3 to his former team.
He played roughly 3.5 quarters-ish, and he's already among the leaders in the CFL for interceptions. Not a great start, Johnny Football.
People who say he's back for a comeback, I don't think so.
Not in the NFL, that's for sure.
So that was our NFL preview episode. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at @ReadingRead. I'll link that in the description.
I'm Robert. It was a pleasure doing this for you today as the audience. We look forward to next time.
I must tell you, we do not agree on much, so to have our division records so similar was definitely surprising.
And the next episode of Read and Read Slater Hall Sports Hour will actually be coming to you live. Well, not live. We'll be recording it in Slater Hall, so it'll be more of an accurate description for you.
So look back, actually a month from now, September 4th will probably be our first live episode, and we'll see you next time.